ripple effect.
What's up? Another episode of the Ripple Effect Podcast. Of course, I'm your host, Ricardo Rendas, also known as Ricky France, and a great episode for you today. Today we have returning guest, Steve Bassett. He is the founder and creator of the Paradigm Research Group, and we discussed disclosure, UAPs, UFOs, ETs, government cover-ups, and much more. And this is the second time Steve's been on. He's been on before, and if you want to check out that conversation, look up episode 330. But before we get into this phenomenal conversation about what is a very hot topic and seems to be a topic that more and more people are interested in, let me remind you this is a value for value show. If you get some value out of the discussions and conversations that I work so hard to bring to you, please consider giving some value back. It doesn't have to be financial. Of course, you can rate the show, review the show, subscribe to the show on any of the platforms you watch or listen to the Ripple Effect Podcast. But if you are in a good financial situation, there are plenty of ways you can help support the show, and no donation or amount is too little. You can support us on Patreon, which really is one of the best ways of supporting a content creator because we can guarantee that monthly revenue every month, and no amount is too little. Like I mentioned, if a small percentage of people who watch and listen to the Ripple Effect Podcast donated as little as $1 a month, I could easily do the show full time. So that puts in perspective how little a small percentage of you have to donate, and donate such a small amount that it would have very little effect on your life and a huge effect on mine. So that's one way you can help support the show. Other ways you can help support the show by sending a one-time donation via Venmo or PayPal, and thank you everyone who has. I can't thank you guys enough. The last month or so, I've been getting a couple donations and a couple new Patreons. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for stepping up and supporting a show that you enjoy. But other ways of supporting the show is checking out our merch store. The website is the Ripple Effect Podcast merch.com, or you can find all these links on our website, rippleeffectpodcast.com. But we have a amazing merch store. The stuff's really inexpensive. The quality is phenomenal. The print is awesome and very detailed. It's also run by a small business owner and a friend of the show, Ryan Graham, who is also the host of the Independent Review Podcast. His merch company, Big Frog Merch, does amazing work, and I can't thank them enough for giving me amazing logos, designs, and some high-quality merchandise to share with my listeners. We have tons of new logos and designs and even more coming very soon. So check out the Ripple Effect Podcast merch.com. Support a podcast you enjoy, support a small business, and get some really cool merch. I also have a couple sponsors. The first sponsor is Content Safe. Content Safe is how I get all my videos on all the video platforms I'm on. All I have to do is upload to one location, then magically within a couple hours, that video, thumbnail, and description will automatically be uploaded to all the video platforms I'm on, like Minds, Band.video, BitChute, Rumble, Rockfin, and many others. If this is a service you're interested in, hit up Matt from Content Safe and let him know you're a listener to Ripple Effect Podcast. He'll definitely take care of you. The last sponsor is Opus Clips, the strongest and fastest and most user-friendly AI viral clip creator. You can upload any type of video from Rumble, YouTube, upload a personal video, and it will make clips for you. It will rate those clips. They will tell you how likely they are to go viral, what clips are discussing things that are trending. You can add music, you can add B-roll. It is the fastest, easiest way of making viral clips. So if you're a content creator, podcaster, YouTuber, or maybe you just want to make clips from your favorite shows, check out Opus Clips. Please use the link in the show description. And by using that link, you can start making viral videos today and also support the Ripple Effect Podcast. Finally, that's it. Enjoy this amazing conversation with Steve Bassett, and I'll talk to you guys on the next one. Peace. And the ripple effects. Give people a brief background on how you got involved in this topic, and then we can expand on some of the more current event stuff.
Yeah, I'm getting better at the short answer to that. Um, the extraterrestrial issue uh, was pretty much established and proven all the way back in the 50s, if not 40s, but it was established, right? It was a major national security problem for the U.S. government, and so they decided to embargo it, classify it, uh, hopefully without having to do harm, kill people, whatever else. Is a serious national security issue, and it was. And so that truth embargo became increasingly firm and well established as the nuclear arms race grew. So the fundamental concern was uh, confirming the ET presence to the world was going to create some unknown unknowns that might lead to a mistake, a nuclear weapons use, and the next thing you know, we destroy the northern hemisphere. And so everybody was going, yeah, sure, I don't want that on my resume. And as the nuclear arms race got worse and worse and worse, peaking at 86,000 nuclear weapons in stock or available in the mid 80s. But then after that, the stocks were pushed back all the way to 20,000. But the research on more advanced weapons, more even better first strike weapons continued. Thus, we are now closer to nuclear war than we've ever been. The truth embargo has thrived on that, and it's been in the mind of many people justified by that. Okay, so that explains the reason why 78 years after Roswell, the government's position is yeah, this we were not sure, we look at this, whatever. They haven't confirmed it. By the government, I mean the president, right? There are people that have come forward and confirmed it, but they're not high enough, or they're just not the president. And until the president confirms it, so what? There's a lot of people that think a lot of things are true. So what happened is the truth embargo finally starts to come apart around 2015, 16, with a bunch of behind the scenes meetings taking place with individuals within the military intelligence complex who felt it was time for us to know the truth, that we could handle the truth. Now, what could they do? Well, one thing, they didn't want to do something that was going to put them in jail, and they would prefer not to do something that was going to destroy any financial prospects they had post retirement. But they eventually, a group of 10 made the decision to come forward, representing, I'm sure, many times that within government, still employed, who believe that the truth embargo should end, but they are not going to challenge it. They have a job. They're going to keep it. And that 10 are pretty well known. They came out in October of 2017. And from that point on, we have been steadily moving towards disclosure. Never going backwards, because in the past we go forward then back and forward then back. We were always into a bit of a headwind, but never going back. We've been steadily moving toward it for 7 years, and after 7 years, we're practically there. The truth embargo is collapsing. It is falling apart. The issue is manifest, and so where we are now is within striking distance. I think we could have it any time in a week, 3 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, and I'll make the case for that. But in 2021, where we were was pretty good. It was 4 years after the To the Stars Academy had come forward. Quite a bit of briefing had been taking place on Capitol Hill, where witnesses were being taken up there to talk with members of Congress privately to give them some sense of what's going on, so they can make a decision of whether they want to get involved legislatively and the risk attendant to that, because they're always concerned about the political risks. This went on 2018, 2019, into 2020, and then in 2020, because of all this backgrounding, and of course, the increasing engagement of the issue by media. Thousands of articles have been printed on this subject, good articles, since 2017. The first piece of legislation ever on the subject was inserted in a bill by Marco Rubio, signed in December by President Biden, and that act was the first legislation. So that was 2020, and then in 2021, and I forget when 2021 we chatted. In July, the second bill was submitted for consideration by, again, the Intel an Intel committee member, Kirsten Gillibrand, and this is the one that set up the UAP task force. And then the 2020 bill called for a classified report. They got that. It called for a public report. We got that June 25th of 2021. And so things were kind of really getting together. You could see the thing shaping. A lot of people were dissatisfied. It wasn't enough. They wanted it right now. I get it. But as an activist that understands the broader picture, I saw that this is exactly what we want. This is going forward. It's all coming together, and I felt very good. And since that show, we've had two more massive pieces of legislation. We've had two major hearings and about another four briefings. Hundreds of witnesses have been coming forward. Members of the House have spoken directly into the camera saying we have an ET presence. And of course, recently, the first task force of its type, really, the task force on declassifying federal secrets was literally formed, announced publicly, indicating it would have subpoena power through the House Oversight Committee headed by Comer. And they're going directly after the MLK documents, RFK documents, the JFK documents, the Epstein files, and the UAP issue, which is slated for another hearing very soon. The witnesses that are that are basically tentatively ready to go are the most powerful ever. And so you take all of that plus a political shift of significance to a different kind of administration that is on the Republican side that has made the deep state a major part of their, how would you say, platform, whatever the deep state means. But it does mean stuff that we're not being told by people that are not doing the right thing. And of course, the ET issue falls right into that. And so, because the Republican Party and the new administration made the deep state an issue, that put the UAP UFO issue directly on their radar. And they have been engaging it in many ways without any consequences. And the Democrats had the same experience. They were doing things going back that did not have any consequences, but they did not look at that and go, wow, this is people are ready for this, and then really push it. No, they just sort of stayed back, did not jump in the pool, just put their feet in the water. And as a result, they handed this issue and the incredible legacy of disclosure literally to the Republican Party and the new president. And so I believe the new president, current president, new president will be the disclosure president, and that will happen soon. So that's kind of a quick assessment of where things are and what's happened since our last chat.
Oh, hold on one second. I think my Pro Tools just make sure it's
Tell me you recorded that. Tell me you didn't get that.
no, it's recorded. Yeah, the Pro Tools just I heard a little glitch, so I just wanted to make sure that there was no issues. But
Okay.
so in 1996, you started your research group. What led to you getting like? Was it like a book? Was it a documentary? Was it another researcher that really got you really intrigued with this topic to want to eventually almost make it your life's work to
Not
really?
almost, not almost. It is my life's work.
It-
Yeah, look, I've always been intrigued by the issue. Love science fiction, read tons of books, watched all the movies. And early on, even when I was a teen, it was clear to me that this was extraterrestrial, what was being reported. I had no bias. I had no reason to just throw it aside. Plus, the debunkers, the Phil classes and so forth, I'd read what they were saying, and it was garbage, right? I'm going, wait a minute, what's going on here? But I was busy wasting my life on nonsense, and so I didn't engage it, but I was well aware of it and quite comfortable with it. All right. And then I continued with my life. And in the first 49 years of my life, not much was happening. I mean, I was trying to do what best I could do, try to be a nice person, but I wasn't going anywhere because I simply did not have, I wasn't connected to something that was strong enough to be a powerful purpose. And I take full responsibility of this for whatever reason, possibly because I was a military brat child. I never really saw making a lot of money as a noble purpose. So I never did. And so my life bumps along like that. However, probably one of the things that made it possible for me to do this is that I spent a great my on my mother's side of the family has been based in Bethesda and in the DC area going back to the 1930s. And so I was coming here when I was 4, 5, 6 years old. Then I go away, come back, go away, come back. And I got to college. I came up here, got a couple of jobs. I've spent a lot of time in DC. And a lot of that was during the 60s and 70s. And so I was firsthand witness to major civil rights marches and activism, speeches, riots. So, I watched cities burn, and so forth. And so I was near and around a lot of activism. And without getting into my sympathies, the point was I didn't really get involved. I marched a couple of times. I did this, I did that, but I didn't sign up. I was an observer. All right, fine. Uh, I'm not going to try to judge myself on that, but I just didn't do it. There were reasons. And so I had this whole kind of history of the activism of that mid 20th century, particularly the 60s and 70s, rattling around in my head. Some of the people I admired most were the activists, as opposed to other people that do other things. So that was all kind of there, but I didn't then take that, put it together, and go somewhere. I just continued to stumble forward. In 1995, I'd had enough of that. Uh, I just couldn't take it anymore, and I made a not an untypical midlife decision, which in my case was not too bad because I had no children, no wife, no pets, nothing, right? Because guys who have wives and pets and children and things that have that midlife decision they got to make, oftentimes, boy, it doesn't work out very well. I did not have that problem. And so I made the decision, I'm going to do something with my life that's meaningful or walk into the ocean, that kind of thing. And I happen to have a place by the ocean. And so what finally made allowed me to make the decision was I I tapped into my awareness of the ET issue and my conviction for most of my life that it was absolutely true, and said, "This is a pretty big deal. Where is it?" And I had read a few books, but the book that affected me the most was John Mack's Abduction. Major breakthrough book. It'll go down in history. He should have, and will eventually get the Medal of Freedom, I think, Congressional Medal of Freedom. But he was a Pulitzer Prize winning Harvard professor that basically put everything on the line because he was convinced there was something very real there. And so I read the books, amazing book called Abduction, Human Encounter with Aliens. And then I went to a conference, my first one ever, down in LA, just to see what's going on. Took that in, read a couple more books, and I said, this is it. Meaning, one, it is the most important issue in the world. Check. There is an effort to try to get the truth out, which we could call an activist effort, though there really wasn't much of a formal activist effort, but it was there. It's kind of a little bit. Check. All right. I'm really interested in the subject. Check. There's a lot of science to it, and I have a degree in physics. Check. And so I'm thinking this could be a good path, except how do you go down that path? And fortunately, by the age of 49, I'd learned a few things, thank God, which I didn't know when I was younger. And one of the most important things I had come to learn by that age is that, and every kid should know this by the time they're 15 or 14, and is this, there's almost nothing in this world you cannot get involved in if you're willing to volunteer. Pick anything, I don't care what it is. Biology, archaeology, activism, politics, whatever. Comic books, well, if you're willing to volunteer. But if you're chasing a paycheck, meaning, okay, how can I go there and get paid to do this? You have just narrowed down your options. And so I said, I want to get into this issue. I'm going to volunteer. And I got incredibly lucky. This is one of those things you look back on, and even on your deathbed, and you're going, wow, did I get lucky? Because in the back of John Mack's book was the address and a phone number for his organization where he was studying contactees in Cambridge, a few blocks down from Harvard. And I just had the fire in me, and I called him up, and somehow I convinced the person who was directing his program there, a nice lady, to let me come and volunteer for them as a development person because I had a background in some business and so forth. I don't know how the hell I did it because they never met me. And so I sold everything off, which I didn't have much, closed down, shut up the apartment, loaded up my car, and drove to Cambridge, cross country. Arrived there on January the 26th. I spent 4 months there doing what I could, but I wasn't really a fit. I met my first contactees when I got there. Almost all the staff were contactees, so that was fun, right? It was interesting. Got to meet John Mack, who I just thought was one of the most bravest, righteous people that I probably would ever meet in my life. When he died, it was awful for me. It was terrible. It took weeks and months for me to kind of just sort of resolve myself to the fact that this man had died before he got the honors he deserved. And while I was there, again, my second piece of luck is I'm not a fit for this very academic organization filled with PhDs and everything else, this kind of renegade, former tennis player. But I was very political. I had not exercised it. Remember I told you what I said? And I said, and I reached a key conclusion, which I don't have any problem repeating ad infinitum. And I think I'd known this much earlier, but I really came to get it while sitting in the office in Cambridge, that the reason this issue was not resolved and that everybody in the world did not know it was real and was engaging it was not because it hadn't been proven. It had been proven 50 times over. So if it's been proven, why isn't it absolutely acknowledged? It is a political issue, exactly like the embargo of Cuba. Everybody knows Cuba exists, but you can't go there. If you do, though it varies from time to time, it's still embargoed, you get arrested. And so people don't go there. And if you try to convince some people to go there with you because, yeah, we should go to Cuba, it should be right, they're going to go, no, I'll lose my job. It's exactly like that, except it's worse. Because in terms of the extraterrestrial presence, it's the equivalent of the United States government saying, you can't go there. And people saying, why not? You just can't go there. Well, what's there? There's nothing there. Wait a minute. I heard a rumor that there's an island there called Cuba and we're embargoed. No, there's no island. Well, then why do you care? That's none of your business. Shouldn't we know what's going on in this island? You don't have a right to know. You don't have a need to know. It's that much worse. So for 78 years, they made a political decision that even though you know something in there and you know something is true, you can't deal with it because we're embargoing it. And the way we're going to embargo it is simply deny it exists. We could just kill everybody, but that's not the way we roll here in the United States. Other countries in other times have done that. And so this was a bizarre situation. How do you build an activist effort or conduct an activist effort to get the authorities, in this case, the United States government, to change their policy when they don't acknowledge that there's even anything to have a policy about? That is tough. And that's why there'd never been an activist movement. And I said, okay, that's what I want to do, right? Not only because it was fun, not only because I love the issue, but because the chances of getting killed were really low. Okay. Getting beat on the head, whatever, getting bitten by a police dog. And so I jumped in. I arrived in Washington, D.C., where I had family and a place to stay and a place to work out of and all the things. And I knew the city pretty well, set up an office and did what had jumped into my head while I was in Cambridge, just sitting there staring out the window. Steve, it's a political thing. How do you get involved? What? Join the Democratic or Republican Party and then just bother them until they gauge the issue? Wouldn't have a chance. It occurred to me nobody had ever bothered to lobby on this. Nobody had ever registered as a lobbyist on this issue. Nobody had ever done it because nobody was stupid enough to do it. Nothing but grief. Absolutely no way to make any money from it. Get laughed at, get demeaned. Okay, great, right? Because I had nothing to lose. I was absolutely free, no encumbrances, nothing. And I said, I will go and be the first person to register on this issue as a lobbyist. And I immediately did it. Got to DC, set up the office, immediately filed under the name Paradigm Research Group, knowing that at some point the Washington Post was going to note this and go, oh, that's interesting, right? Took them about 4 months, and they suddenly called me up and said, Mr. Bassett, you registered a lobbyist on this issue? And I said, yes. And they said, well, we'd like to send a reporter out to talk to you. And I said, well, that's fine. And they sent a reporter out to my office in Bethesda for a very long interview and took a lot of photos. And they printed a very good story. In other words, whatever I said to him, however I handled it, in other words, if I have any qualities, if somebody says, Steve, why are you even successful at all? Which it doesn't mean why are you rich? I'm not. I'm terrible at raising money, but why are you successful at all? Because for whatever reason, just because it's natural to me, I came at this issue from pure authenticity. In other words, you got to be authentic about this. If you stray even a little bit from authenticity, you are in deep trouble because this issue has been stigmatized like no other issue before. And so I must have just come across, and they write this great article. I still have it. The photo was one of the worst of me ever taken. It's just awful. I'm holding up John Mack's. I'm holding up the huge book. Hang on a second. In this photo, I guess I could share the photo. Hang on a second. Um,
And
but
I'd love to get into I've had Ralph Blumenthal on.
oh yeah,
Yeah, you know Ralph, he did New York Times. Yeah.
I'm holding this up in that photo that turned up in the Washington Post. It is the record of the 1992 symposium held at MIT. This is so far ahead of its time, right? Where they brought in researchers on abduction, they brought in contactees, and it's at MIT. And this, look at this, right? That's 42. All right, 44. He writes the book Abduction and gets that out. And so that gave me cred. People saw that. I put that article out. Oh, you must be doing something. And so that's how it all began. And the reason I called it Paradigm Research Group, because I'm not a research organization, was that what I did was I contacted a number of organizations that were basically doing research and said, can I be your lobbyist? And they would go, you're actually a lobbyist. I said, well, how much will it cost? I'll do it for free. So I had this pro bono relationship with a number of these groups. So I called it Paradigm Research Group, being a lobbyist for these groups. Was I able to lobby? No. I mean, it gets more ironic all the time.
Story is hilarious.
And I'm still a registered lobbyist. Okay. But this is 1996, 1997. You cannot go up in the hill in 1997 and say, I'm registered as a lobbyist, sit down and talk to me, right? I have no money at all. I can't contribute to your campaign. I've got no connection, but I'm on this issue. Please talk to me. No, not a chance in hell. And so I couldn't lobby, but I was a registered lobbyist, and that gave me cred. And then I built a website, I did some things, but all of that was basically activism. In other words, I used that platform to launch an activist effort on this subject to raise awareness and get more people involved in an activist effort. Now, there was somebody else doing this at the same time from a different perspective with far more resources but he was in fact an activist and still is, but he's more than that, and that's Stephen Greer. So Greer was already kind of moving in to the activist arena on this issue, late 80s, early 1990s. Okay. And but he did register as a lobbyist, right? So I mean he's coming at it from an interesting way, and he's doing stuff that's clearly activism. But he had substantial sums of money to work with. He had contacts and resources I didn't have. So he made a big difference and still is. So without the platform that he had, though, I just had the great idea. If I register as a lobbyist, I'll be the first one to do it. And at that point going forward, no one else would do it. And so I had that hook that went on. And I was the only UFO lobbyist for the next roughly 18 years. And I think about 6, 7 years ago, somebody else registered, and now there's about 8 or 9. And so that's kind of how I got in. And then the last thing I'll say is this: the more I engage this issue, I learned about the ET reality and so forth in the history. I kept learning more and more about the U.S. government's policies, particularly with respect to the extraterrestrial issue. I also learned about the abuses of secrecy, right? I also learned about the risk of nuclear war. I learned about the connection between the ETs and the nuclear missiles, and I began to see them getting connected. And then I began to realize that the ET issue was way more than just we have a right to know about the ETs being here. It was, in fact, deliberately a transition underway. not only by humans, but by the ETs, leading to the most profound event in human history, and maybe the only thing that we can do that will save us from ourselves, because we are headed for hell in a handbasket. Uh, and Basket has got a jetpack behind it. Things are falling apart, and so it very quickly. It wasn't just my activism. It wasn't just, okay, I've got a niche. It was, you're involved in something so incredible and so important that shut up, don't complain, do the best you can. And there was no way in hell I was ever going to stop. Once you get into something like this, you do not stop. And thank God I don't have anybody like a wife or a girlfriend or anything else, saying, you got to stop it. This is driving me crazy. You're wasting your time. You don't have enough time for me. No, I don't have any problem like that. And I have so many colleagues that are exactly in that place, meaning they will be dealing with this issue, even if we get disclosure, until the day they die, right? Because this is the biggest thing that has probably ever happened to the human race. Not because ETs in some distant past haven't engaged ancient civilizations or even Native Americans, Native South Americans, way back when they could do whatever the hell they wanted, but because this is an ET engagement triggered by the use of nuclear weapons as we became a spacefaring civilization for the first time. And so this is a very special time. The engagement is extremely significant, and nothing like this has been bigger. Whether we will surpass how powerful and big this is in the future, I don't know. I'm not sure if we ever will. So you get hooked into something of this level and that's it, right? I'm good. Never, it hasn't been fun, but I spent most of my first 49 years bored out of my mind, depressed as hell, and I have never been bored 1 hour in the last 28 years. So I feel very grateful.
I absolutely love that story. One, there's tons of humor in it, and it just I can relate to that your motivation, because at my core I'm the same way. Like I've never, and I think that's why I've always been kind of a good at many things, but horrible at like running a business, because I've never been motivated by money. Like money just, and I'll meet people who are very successful financially, and I can see they're motivated. They will do things just for the sake of getting more ones and zeros in the bank account, making more money.
Which is okay, right? I mean, that is fine. It's and I don't have any criticism of people that do that. You can have no money and do awful things. You can have fantastic money, do incredible things. It doesn't matter. Everybody's got to do what they've got to do. All right. The truth embargo has kept very good people who've had enormous resources from engaging this issue, even though it's that important. These same people are giving wonderful funding to many, many groups doing wonderful things. Okay, but not this. So I'm not going to blame them for not doing this, but I will point out that the government has successfully prevented uh, the American people, who are the wealthiest people on the planet, basically, from supporting this particular issue. All right, and one of the goals of the activist movement was to change that, and it's happening finally. Okay, it's happening. We're about to see a lot of money pour into this, but ultimately it will, in fact, be post-disclosure, where we will need it even more. All it means is that when the money finally comes out in post-disclosure, I will welcome it in my world, and I will do the best I can with it. I have colleagues that are getting way more than I will get, again, as donations, right? We're all 501c3 now, including me. Do the best I can. Um, I will welcome it and understand that prior to disclosure, it was not easy. And so you're going to see an explosion of activity. It just took too long. It shouldn't have taken 28 years, but I know why it took 28 years. And I can't complain, because one of the major activist movements of the 20th century were just people of every color could have the same rights, or at least get moving toward having the same rights as everybody else. The civil rights movement took 90 years. It took 90 years, and a whole lot of people died. and other terrible things happen in order to get it. So for me to complain because it's taken 28 years since there was a legitimate activist movement to get what we want would be not cool. And the other thing that I'll mention this is one of the reasons why people pay attention to me at all. I mean, it's not my vast, gravitas or, 18 degrees or that kind of stuff. It's that one of the things I learned long ago, uh, during the civil rights movements and the anti-war movements and that stuff, because it was a phrase that came out back then. I never forgot it. And the phrase goes like this: if you want to tell people the truth, I mean, really the truth, you need to make them laugh, because if you don't, they will kill you. Right. And I've taken that to heart. And so consequently, I've always felt my role is get the message out, let people know what's going on, but make it engage the humor in it, right? So they could, be comfortable with it. And that's a motto that's helped me be effective, certainly as a speaker.
Well, you see it with comedy. It's like if I just went on stage and just started lecturing my perspectives on the world, I'd probably get some backlash from a crowd. But if I make it funny while I do it, people engage and people aren't as defensive and they don't, So it's a great way of getting ideas out there. I mean, I think some of the greatest thinkers, inventors, I mean, some amazing people I've had on the show, musicians, MMA fighters, whatever it is, professional athletes. John Stockton's actually coming back on the show this week for a second time. Like these guys, like yourself, aren't motivated by money. What makes them great is that they're motivated by their work, their search for truth, their art, whatever they're perfecting or trying to discover. That's what motivates them to get up every morning and continue doing it. And when you look at the great thinkers of history, a Nikolai Tesla or whoever it may be, like they were motivated by the work. It wasn't a finance or money motivated, and I think that's a noble thing. Much like myself, I mean that's why I continue to do podcasts. It's not like I'm making a killing doing it. I just enjoyed the search for truth, and like yourself, like just trying to figure out the meaning of all this and trying to figure out all that. But I wanted to get into John Mack just a little bit because I think much like yourself, he did something that was unusual at the time, where you were the first person to register as a lobbyist, in the manner that you were. John Mack was one of the first really credible people who was, like you said, a Harvard psychologist who actually went into the topic as a skeptic and then in the process became a believer, which was pretty phenomenal. Can you get into what he was researching and then what he
Yeah.
that made him a believer and change his whole perspective on the topic?
Believer is a term that I try to avoid. Don't use it. Again, this is not about belief, right? And I'm not, it's not a criticism, but part of the truth embargo, of the countless number of little mechanisms that was used to somehow maintain the truth embargo in spite of the obvious presence, was language, and one of the language was believer, which helped to hook it to religion. In other words, people believe in God, they believe in UFOs. I'm a believer. No, and so that was used by the skeptics, and so no, not a believer, but he was becoming convinced by a mounting amount of evidence. All right, first of all, John Mack, there were people of some with some substance that had gone into the issue and abduction issue. Uh, well, I mean, Bud Hopkins was a very good artist, highly accomplished artist. He jumped in, but he wasn't coming in from the academic side. David Jacobs was an academic. He was teaching at Temple history, very good professor, but and he got into this issue and he wrote, and Temple allowed him to teach a class, one of these, I guess, not for credit classes, maybe independent, which was of course always packed. And so he was kind of a lead up, but the first person who really had the full boat credentials that engaged this issue, if from the height of the high end academic, was Mack. He wasn't teaching it; he was studying it at the hospital, where he was head of psychiatry, I believe. Um, so he had but his connection to Harvard was obvious, and so he had the guts to dive in. But he met with I think Jacobs. He met with Hopkins and some others. He didn't just jump in. He didn't acknowledge their work. And of course, there's the symposium in '92, and there's a list of all the people that were there in that book. By the way, that book goes for about $750 now, but I'm not selling it. But Mac was a milestone, uh, and he paid a price. There's no question. Uh, Harvard did try to get rid of him. They tried to shut him down. He had already gotten a lot of press. People knew about his work. He had a Pulitzer Prize. So he was not somebody you could just, shuffle off, dismiss. So they tried to take him down by a review process in which his work could be challenged as not being scientifically appropriate. And it was bogus, but still they gave it a shot. Unfortunately for Harvard, John had some support. In addition to his own lawyer, he was able to get Dan Sheehan to come in and help and represent. And he had Lawrence Rockefeller willing to back him up with money. And so essentially they held that, and Danny Sheehan and his lawyer just ate their lunch. I mean, it is like embarrassing. I don't know if it was filmed, but I'm sure they were worried. Oh, I hope this don't get out. And so at the end, they said, "Okay, okay, fine. Keep doing what you're doing." Not that they still couldn't make his life difficult. So he continued to do what he do. So he got the book. Then he writes the book about Cosmos. I forget the exact name. My memory's not as good as it used to be. But the second book. But one of the most important things he did was he gave absolute credibility to one of the most significant stories in the history of the modern era of the phenomena, and that was the school children phenomena. And what I'm referring to is that the extraterrestrials who do what they do for whatever reason, I mean, I don't know, they don't talk to me personally, but they had this not habit, they had this technique of they would land a craft near a schoolyard and get out. And usually, young kids, not high school. And so naturally, the kids would just run right over. Oh, what's this? What's this? And then they would project images in their minds about a future that didn't look too good. A kind of projection of this is kind of where things are going. And by and large, that's the way it was received by the kids. It wasn't received as, oh, this is your future, right? This is a predestined future. We're just letting you know how awful it's going to be. Thank you. We're gone now. No, and it was an effort to kind of project this. Now, they didn't do this once; they did it a number of times. But the two best known instances are Ruwa, Zimbabwe, and the Ariel School case, which was basically one of those, the kids of expats and so forth. And then Westall in Australia. These are the two best known. But when Mac goes to Ruwa, the Ariel School, and interviews those kids on camera, he legitimized one of the most significant things the extraterrestrials do. Otherwise, there was no way in hell that those kids were going to have much chance of being validated or be able to engage it themselves. And so that was one of his greatest contributions. Ultimately, of course, it becomes a documentary, Aerial Phenomena by Randy Nickerson. But it took forever to get it out because this is a tough issue. And okay, make sure I haven't lost you here.
No, I'm just showing screen
sharing. Gotcha.
Show
what you got to show. Yeah.
Yeah, this was for people watching. This is one of the drawings that the kids drew about the experience.
Tons of stuff. Yes. This and once you understand the school children phenomenon, and then if you've read enough about contact to know that one of the common things that happens with contactees, regardless of why they're on the ship, they could be up there for whatever. We need a fourth for bridge, whatever. But they would be taken aside, and these same kind of images are projected in their head, or maybe on the side of the ship, whatever the hell. That look what's coming. right? I mean, that's kind of the sense of it. They weren't giving him a lecture like, let us discuss your future based upon these points. No, no, it's imagery. It's like they're trying to make it very visceral for them that they would then carry that forward. Now, how many people have received that message, and kids and adults? Who the hell knows? But it could be in the millions. And so think of it as like seeding at something in the brains of a lot of people that ultimately would work its way into the evolving process, motivating them to get involved, motivating them to be an activist, make a film, talk, whatever the hell. That's the best way I can explain it. Maybe there's a total different reason. ETs will tell us one day. And so, once you know about that, okay, and then you are aware of how impossible the situation is in terms of the nuclear threat. You begin to see a rationale. And John Mack was one of the key people that seeded that rationale. Recently, one of the kids who got that message, and again, you know, the ETs do what they do. It wasn't necessarily a fun thing. People that have gotten these kinds of messages as contactees, it doesn't necessarily make their life better. Some of them, it really is a problem, and it can really hurt them, could damage their life. You got this stuff in their head. And so, whatever the ET's rationale, it's not without a cost. But that's the way it is with humans too, right? And so Emily Trim recently, she had a tough time in her life. And in addition to that, she just recently died, I think at the age of 41. I think most of these kids are still alive, but she was known and spoke at conferences. And so we noted her loss, and she is up on my in memoriam section on my website. So once you get that, right, and if you personally met some of the nuclear weapons tampering witnesses, right, where they firsthand were present when these ET craft would come down, turn the weapons off, turn the nukes off, not one, not 10, but 30 on multiple occasions, including the Soviet Union. Once you start to get all that together, you start to get a sense of what the hell is going on. And so, as I come to eventually deal with this issue, Max research and what he did with Ruah, and of course, just in general, it is, it's like, some people are like probing me, well, why are you doing this? I'll just point right there. And so by 2004, I'd been in the field for now at that point 8 years. And I'm doing my thing. And one of my things was, let's hold an X conference. Let's hold a exopolitics or a political based conference, emphasizing that in actually Washington, D.C. area. And I was able to bootstrap 6 of them, meaning I started with no money and just sold tickets. Lost on every single one of them, but we had 6X conferences. And the first was in 1994. And it was out in Gaithersburg, but every one of them had a press conference at the National Press Club, which is in the 13th floor of the building I'm in right now. I wanted John Mack to come, but it was the first conference like that. And, he is, a very important guy with other work, and he doesn't know what's going to happen. And so consequently, he was not available. It's okay, because I knew I was going to invite him the next year. And so at about the same time, I'm getting the invite out to John, and he might have come because I was starting to get people started to recognize, this guy's, he's a good guy. He's doing good things. He stepped out. He looked left and stepped out in front of a truck in the UK, and he was killed instantly. Life is that way. I almost got killed exactly the same way in about 1970, when it was 1983, 4. I was for the first time in a British zone, protectorate island in the Gulf, and I'd been there 2 days. I had the car. I'm driving on the left side of the road, driving on the right side of the car, and I'm leaving, and I know what I'm supposed to do, but I didn't do it. I looked left, and a truck went by at 45 miles an hour. If I had moved 1 second, it would have killed me like that. Ironically, that's how he died in the UK about 24 years later, and I tell you, it's upset me. And then there was a lot of rumors about it because this is the UAP issue. It is embargo. Some nasty things have happened. which troubled me even more because I was almost certain. So I researched it. I've been to the UK a number of times. And one of my visits back in 18, I actually went up to the intersection, exactly where it happened, looked it all over, scoped it, then tried to imagine it very late at night at 11 o'clock. And it was absolutely clear to me exactly what happened, which is what happened. And I talked to some people that are local right there. He was late, he was tired, and he stepped forward, he looked left. You got to look right. And based on the way things were set up and the fact there were no lights, that's what happened to John. And so we lost him in
Ralph,
2005.
Ralph Blumenthal said the same thing, that there's a lot of circulation about, possible, murder, assassination, whatever. But he's like, he thinks it was just a
Absolutely.
accident. It was just accidental, and it's
And
not hard to believe, really. I mean,
yeah,
you get in these habits of you look one way because you live in the U.S. your whole life, and then you go to another country, you still have
sure.
that habit. Car comes from another direction, hits you. It just seems like a really, really sad story. It doesn't seem like there's anything else to that. I mean, what makes him so interesting is the fact that he did go into, and correct me if I'm wrong, he did go into the topic as a skeptic, kind of, he wanted to, as a psychologist, Harvard psychologist, or psychiatrist, I'm not sure which title he had, but he went into it to try to see if some of these experiences that these children were having were based from trauma or other psychological issues. And then as he interviewed more and more people, he started to realize, like, okay, there's something more to this, right? Is that more or less how it happened?
Close, close. I mean, he did something that, well, we need more. By the way, let me be clear. We have 5,000 colleges and universities. Of course, they're not all Harvard, but still, we got 5,000 college universities in this country. That's a lot. They've gotten too expensive, but that's another issue. Over the 78 years since Roswell, millions of professors have gone through those schools, taught, right? Just taught in those schools, right? Millions, including huge numbers in the scientific area. In all of that time, 77 years, only, I would say, the number of professors teaching at our universities that legitimately, with a proper authenticity, engage this issue can be counted on the fingers of one hand. That's how bad they dropped the ball. And I know why, but let me be clear. And I know something about history. These kinds of things happen, right? You're getting into something and the authorities don't like it. So the next thing you know, you're strapped to a stake and they're lighting a fire under. I get it. But we don't do that anymore. And so it is the greatest intellectual failure in history when millions of professors in 5,000 universities and colleges for 78 years stand back and don't touch this issue because what? Right? Out of fear, whatever. Unbelievable. If they had given it a reasonable approach, a reasonable, authentic skepticism, and then investigated, talked to the right people, they could have shortened the truth embargo by decades, but they didn't do it. And so, kudos to Bruce Maccabee, an academic that did this, though he basically was working for the government. David Jacobs, God bless him, who taught this as a second, one of those non-credited courses, I think, for years. Though when I first met him, because he was a fine professor, and I said, have you been bothered? Did they give you a hard time? Well, Temple did not. He said no, but this is what he told me. He said, I'll never be a full professor. And some 25 years later, he retired as an associate professor. Okay. So Mac not only was one of the few that went there, he went there from the heights of academia. All right. So what happened was this. He was an authentically skeptical person. Okay. No fundamental bias, just don't know enough. And because he was dealing in psychiatry, it turned out that, and he had this high position, of course, at Harvard. The government, I think, was apparently sending him, I think, some people in the military, whatever, who were having issues, and he was helping them, right? So he's working with some of these people. And my understanding is that some of these military people, and now that's not going to shock anybody, they'd be talking about, this is what's bothering me and whatever. And by the way, right, these things turn up in my room late at night, and that caught his attention. That's what's, I believe, started it. But I really need to research it so I can get it perfectly right. But and so so as an appropriate, authentic scientist, if you've got credible people saying things like that, it gets your attention, and you should look into it, right? You just don't go online and go, "Oh my God, people that actually address this issue are called are asked to wear tinfoil hats," right? And so he then decided to look into it more. And logically, logically what he did was is go talk to people that have investigated this issue. And and Bud Hopkins was just down the street in New York, and he talked with a number of individuals, and the legitimacy of it began to manifest, right? He didn't just jump in and go, "Oh, of course, no, no." And there is an apocryphal event that I think happened, and but I can't remember who told me this. So don't take it to the bank, but I think it's about 90% likely that it happened roughly like this. He's visiting, maybe for the first time, Bud Hopkins, one of the great researchers on this issue. He hasn't never gotten the full credit. One day he will be honored because he had a great career. He didn't need to do this. He was a well-known artist. He had it made. So he goes to visit Hopkins to get his thoughts on it. And he's asking him questions, trying to make a decision. Is this real enough for me to take the risk to go in and really aggressive? So he's talking about it, and I think he sort of asked Bud, "Look, have you gotten a lot of letters from people about this? Once you wrote the books, did they start contacting you?" And Hopkins says, "Yeah, sure, I get huge numbers. In fact, there's tons of them in the closet over here, right? I haven't even opened them, and I have not got the time. They come in too many, can't open them. Because this is back when letters were kind of still a thing." So he said, "Go over the closet, open the door, grab 4 or 5 at random." And so he did. He brings them over, and then he just opens, starts reading them. Randomly select from a pile of letters sent to Bud Hopkins. Why? Not for money, not because, "Oh, please come visit me, I want to be famous," but I just want you to know. Just you. I don't tell this to my friends and neighbors. I'd like you to know my story, so at least you know. And Mac was reading this letters, and in a sense, I think what the story is trying to say at that point, he's going, "This is real, and I'm going to deal with it." And he goes forward, and eventually it matures, and his involvement grows uh, to the point where he's able to convince one of his colleagues who works at MIT, David Pritchard, to sponsor. It wasn't an MIT sponsored event, the symposium that the record of which I just showed you in that book. Big deal, 1992. I don't even know about it, right? Uh, uh, I didn't know about it until I read Alien. I mean, Abduction in 95. But I heard about that. So again, this huge thing was happening up there in, Ivy League land, championed by John Mack. Harvard tried to stop it. They got pushed back, and John went forward. And if he had lived, believe me, he would have helped advance this issue. In other words, if he had lived, the chances of many more academics getting on board, not getting on board with, we need to look into, no, really getting on board would have been great, and it would have shortened it, which is why some people felt, well, yeah, he had to be taken out. No, bad things just happen, folks. They do. And it was extremely important for me to respond to that anytime it comes up, because the family definitely is very uncomfortable for them to hear anything along those lines regarding John. So I helped to try to make sure that people get it. It was just like I almost got killed in the Cayman Islands, which would have been less of a deal. But I still can't. I cannot not, synchronicities. I read the Celestine prophecy. I got the synchronicity of that will always be there. that 20 years apart, I almost got killed in exactly the same way, but I, by 1 second, survived in order to do everything that I was able to do, get involved in this issue, and even go work at John Mack's organization, only to have him die from exactly the same situation a few years later. How do you respond to things like that other than humility?
Yeah, and there's a great video, you could still find it on YouTube, of him on Larry King. Here it is, him on Larry King explain
Look,
the story, and I believe he had a woman with him too who had a experience, and very interesting story. I mean, the thing about, like you said, in this topic, there's so many unsung heroes. You know, so many people that deserve some amazing credit, that, you know, you hear their names from time to time, but you don't realize how important their work and research was to get to where we are now. Because for a long time, this was a very kind of laughed at topic. You know, like you said, when you got into it, you know, Stephen Greer, you know, in the 90s, and I believe late 80s too, he started getting into this topic. Like, you know, you guys were some of the first people that, you know, well, at least when I first started kind of getting into the topic, names that came up, and I'm like, wow, these guys been researching this stuff for a long time, and whatnot. There are some concerns though, and I'd love to get your opinion and insight on it, on how many of these people, because now you're starting to see a lot of people come forward, and then some people seem credible, some seem less credible. What do you think's going on? Do you think there are some people planted to kind of discredit others who, you know, are telling the truth and are sharing information, and actually their hearts are in the right place in regards to kind of searching for truth and evidence? What's your thoughts on that?
yes. Uh, and this is true of just about every area of, well, it's certainly true about any major areas of inquiry that are of great interest to the public at large. It's not like in the early days of quantum mechanics, a lot of people just turning up on blogs or something with wild, crazy. No, 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 no. I mean, but this is a subject that is, of course, of universal interest. And so, over the years, you've had people come forward to just make stuff up. Over the years, you've had some people that were literally asked to come forward or tasked to come forward to muddy the waters. Okay. Which, you know, I'll take that over being dragged off and put in a gulag. I mean, you know, we are America, we're not evil. So there's that. And then over the years, there have been people that have gotten in, done some of this to get attention, but some of it to make money as the issue grew and what have you. All right. This has happened. It's human nature. No big deal. It doesn't bother me. Here's why. The issue has been proven by the work of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people who have written thousands of books, right? Now, the fact that some of the books may be off in left field doesn't change the fact that the body of evidence is enormous. It was proven long ago. Right? And of course, the government knew, right? I mean, the government got a crash vehicle in bodies in 1947. I think that's proof, isn't it? Right? And the proof that that happened is been well established by many writers, not the least of which was you know, Don Schmidt and oh God, again, my memory is not good, but his co-author. Sorry, I don't have it. I could go find it. I hate the fact that my memory is getting bad.
Well,
Uh,
what's that famous quote? Why remember anything, or why memorize anything you can look up? If you can look it up, I guess you're all you're doing is
Thomas Carey.
there you go.
Okay. So the Witness to Roswell is a masterpiece. Unbelievable amount of work behind it. 400 interviews, including deathbed, whatever. Anyway, Roswell is absolutely proved. So, so it doesn't matter who's turning up saying what. Once it's proven, it's proven. Okay, so we have some very solid scientific understandings regarding quantum physics. It's that have been proven and tested, one of the most tested theories ever. That doesn't mean somebody can show up and start talking about the fact that, well, you know, they got this wrong and whatever, and we go here and people, oh my God, quantum physics. No, it's not. People do what they do. Once it's proven, it's proven. You don't have to keep reproving it. Now, here's how the government, one of the many ways that the government has been able to sustain the truth embargo for 78 years is they help to ensure that no matter how much proof you had, it wasn't enough. And so, in one way, the way they were dealing with the public is, there's something there, but you haven't really proven it yet. Keep working at it. Keep working at it. All right. Uh, and just keep proving it. And for most of this modern era, from 47 on to again the late 80s and early 90s, when you started to see some activism really starting to happen, that's what the public was doing. God bless them.
Well, the proof, I know there's
Prove it over and over and over again. Another doc, another book, another interview, another whatever, because at some point it's going to be so much proof, it's going to drop the scale. And what they didn't know is the government had their hand on the scale. You could interview 10,000 people. You could get photographs here, photographs there, whatever the hell you got. It was never going to be enough. The basic analogy is you sit through a month trial, right, of some big shot or something that's got connections with the government, and you find him guilty. And then the judge comes out and says, we're going to try it all over again. And you're going to have to sit for another trial. And people are just going nuts. And then you sit through another trial, easily proven guilty. You say he's guilty. No, I don't think it's there yet. We're going to try it again. And people would think, well, that's absurd. That's ridiculous. The government has been forcing us to retry this for 78 solid years after we already knew the truth. And people said, well, if that's all we got. And so they researched and did the docs and on and on and on. And they formed organizations, NICAP, APRO, MUFON, on and on and on and on. Thousands of cases, whatever. And the government just said, no, not true. And so, and that helped to prolong the truth embargo. Nobody was prepared to put the money into challenging the government in a what we'll call formal way. That's one of the reasons they got away with this. There was talk about it. The idea was put out there a few times. But what didn't happen, and it could have happened at any time, is Lawrence Rockefeller, who supported Mac, who supported Danny Sheehan, who tried to get the Clintons to bring out the files. He was a very wealthy man. And he was a philanthropist and a pretty good guy. He's the good Rockefeller, whatever the hell. Lawrence could have made the decision, I'm going to give $50 million or $100 million to an organization and a legal counterpart. And we're going to go after the government on this issue and sue the hell out of them on multiple fronts, drive them nuts. No one ever did that, though they talked about it. It never happened because the ridicule and the pushback on them would have been brutal. And if you're wealthy and you have money, there's a lot of causes out there to help. Do you want to go there? Because the government had stigmatized this to the point where they created an intellectual ghetto. And the moment you touch the issue, they threw you right in a ghetto, no matter who you were. And so they didn't, right? Now, that even now, we're only seeing the beginnings of what we'll call serious funding of the legal activist side of that. And of course, Danny Sheehan is leading there, right? So in other words, the truth embargo was incredibly successful. One of the most amazing things any government's ever done is convince, now 300 million people that something that's right in front of their face is not true and get away with it for 78 years, right? Unbelievable. Now, if you're a dictatorship and you're taking people out and shooting them in the back and making them disappear like in the old days in South America, yeah, I get it. But no, they didn't do that. They did it through very sophisticated, clever manipulation of the truth and other techniques, intel techniques, propaganda, whatever, to be able to do it with the minimum amount of bloodshed. Okay, I get that. All right. So the situation with Mac was much more seminal because of that. And so to get to the final point is this. We've already proven it. We're already engaging the government. I don't care who shows up. What? Somebody's going to show up and say something ridiculous and get trolled on the internet and actually get revealed as being fake, and we're going to what? End the activism or oh no, it's not true. No. All of the nonsense that is turned up, all of the bogus theories, whether authentic or an authentic effort or just made it all up to make money, every abuse of this issue by anybody going back 78 years, I do not blame a single one of those people. Meaning, I don't go on, I've never publicly criticized any of them, right? Because the fault is not theirs. It is the government of the United States who is responsible for this. They have lied and misrepresented and embargoed this issue and created a massive truth vacuum, sucked it all out, which just it's inviting stuff to come in and fill it up. The government is responsible for this problem, right? Not the people that have come up with things and service this truth vacuum. They're responsible. The government is responsible, and that's where we need to go. Not pissing on each other or poking at this and poking at that, meaning, this person, I think they're no true. I don't think I like what they're saying. So let me go online and dox them, all this kind of crap. Look, no one likes to be lied to. No one likes to have somebody kind of play them a little bit. Now, I get that. I get that. And outside of this issue and other areas, yeah, you got to do something. But on this issue, it is different, right? So it doesn't bother me. And they do what they do. They say what they say.
Yeah, this issue is a lot like the 9/11 issue, the JFK issue. There's just so much infighting that I think becomes counterproductive, where
Yeah,
people,
sure.
point the finger of each other, and then they're like, hey, instead of pointing the finger at like, hey, the government's lying, there's something here to uncover. Maybe we might disagree on some specifics or whatever, but let's kind of keep focus that the enemy is the people who are suppressing the information, not other people who are researching who might be coming to other conclusions.
Okay, this opens up a door that I'm going right through. Okay, you open this door, I'm going right through. Okay, because again, once you get into this, you start thinking about these things, and you get sensitive to stuff. So I, I came of age as the Vietnam War literally starts. Right, it just followed me from the moment that I'm 16 from then on, and eventually I became fully aware of the lies that were used to help service that war, keep it going. I'm aware of the lies that were used to invade Iraq and Afghanistan. In other words, it's one thing to go there to solve a problem, deal with something, even though there's a terrible cost. It's another thing to lie your way there. Okay? I mean, that's not the same. And so I'm aware of that. It's awful. It's terrible. Right? And then one thing that really stands out, 911. I was in Washington when it happened. All right? Literally. I got called up in the morning that morning by a friend and said the plane just crashed into the tower in New York, one of the trade towers. And I said, well, that was inevitable. The damn thing's so tall, some idiot was going to finally run into it. And went back to sleep. About 20, 30 minutes later, he calls me again and says there's a plane that's crashed into the Pentagon. And I'm going, okay, that's hard to do. It's not easy to crash into the Pentagon. And I'm saying that's terrorism. And I got up and I have watched this stuff. I watched those buildings fall for months. Developed serious indigestion problems, went in, they had to put tubes down me, and it was nothing but pure stress. And so now things move forward. And here's where I'm going with this. Down the line, I forget how long it was, I came to understand that a certain degree of investigation and reporting was not happening for whatever the hell the reason. And people were irritated by it. And what I learned is that the relatives, mostly the wives of people that died in the trade centers, had gotten together and they were savagely, how would you say, not abusing, but savagely engaging the government in public and even in lawsuits to get that investigation. And they did it well enough that finally the government yielded. Yielded. Really? Really? The widows had to press you to the point where, well, we should do a little investigation. And that really pissed me off. Okay, so what is my larger point? I think that
Right.
one day we may learn this, that one of the reasons The United States government, which has done a lot of nice things, it's created a country that I'm sure glad I was born into it. It has a lot of worthy aspects about it. It is a democratic representative constitutional republic, and you can do things here you can't do in a lot of other countries. And I'm a citizen and I'm a patriot. But one of the things I think I finally came to realize, and I think I'm right, is that the extraordinary circumstances of ETs suddenly increasing their presence after we dropped the bombs in Japan. And then the crash vehicle and the bodies, meaning, and then they put the press release, whatever. The fact that there was a thing that started back in 45, 46, 47. Two things, actually. The nuclear arms race and the ET situation, which was metastasizing. Because the government felt, maybe even legitimate, that this had to be suppressed. There's too many unknown unknowns here. If we tell the people about this, it's going to make things even more unstable, and somebody's going to nuke somebody, and it's all over. So it's national security until things come under control, right? The Soviet Union, U.S., start getting together, having parties, enjoying themselves, and we're good. Then maybe, but we never got good. And so one of the reasons, so they basically had to create a massive disinformation campaign of lies and God knows what else in order to maintain what they considered a legitimate national security matter. But I fear that the enormous success they had about lying so blatantly in some ways, and using all the sophisticated techniques that became manifest as the huge intelligence world expanded. We developed what I call the secret empire, whatever, and relying on all that and computers and supercomputers, whatever the hell. The success they had in maintaining that lie just almost certainly just tempted them. Look, if we can get away with that, we can get away with anything. Right? So for national security reasons, we're going to lie about Vietnam, we're going to lie about Iraq, we're going to lie about Afghanistan, we're not going to give the truth out on 911. We're always going to do what is in our best interest to make our life easier. And so in a sense, the truth embargo of the ET set the stage for 70 years of more lying than our democratic republic can handle, thus leading to where we are now, where trusting government has collapsed. Chaos reigns, film at 11. Nobody believes anybody. And by and large, the American people, and to some degree in other countries, get most of their news and, how would you say, social thinking from very good stand-up comedians. So I connect these two together. The truth embargo has poisoned the well, and now we all drink poisoned water until that well gets how would you say, cleaned up, and we can start getting the truth. And so the truth embargo, the end of the truth embargo may be more than just we finally get a confirmation of ETs. It may trigger what could be called years from now the golden truth era on the planet Earth, where all of a sudden telling the truth became a thing, right? It became really a thing. And everybody was competing with each other to tell more truth than the other person. Not only people, but countries. And then as good things came from that, people saying, this is good. This is good. This truth thing is really good. I like it. I'm getting great emails. I don't have to take antacids anymore. I'm not worried about getting picked up in the middle of the night. Telling the truth is actually quite superior than lying your ass off. And so that may be what comes from this. I just hope I live long enough to find out for sure whether it happens or not.
Now, one thing that we talk a lot about, and I think last time we had this discussion, we talked about how there's like endless amounts of proof, right? And for the skeptical listener, so if there's somebody listening who's like, okay, Steve's always talking about this endless amounts of proof that we know, like what cases would you use as like, and if somebody wanted to further research, okay, some of the best cases, would it be the Brazilian crash, which I think James Fox did a great documentary on, where they had a whole town shut down, and the police officer that retrieved some type of body ended up dying of some mysterious
Sure.
cancer disease? Is it the Phoenix Lights? Is it Roswell? Is it the school situations where these school children felt like they had some interaction with these ETs? Like, is there a couple cases that you're like, what, this is maybe our best evidence?
Mm-mm.
No.
No, no. It's like asking a scientist. I have a degree in physics, which is utterly worthless. I think they teach it in the eighth grade now. I got it in 1970, but it helped me to think scientifically, and I still lean that. I got a lot of science books right behind me. Whatever. Okay. It's like asking somebody, Professor Bassett, uh, what is the one thing that convinces you that this whole quantum mechanic thing is like real? And I would come back, oh, well, that would be the double slit experiment. Okay. Where they pass, particles through two slits and ends up getting an interference pattern on the other side that you're supposed to only have with the wave. And off we go. And that's what I would say. And then they would come back and say, well, how sure are you about that? And then those slits could have been defective. I mean, I know personally, I didn't personally see that experiment. I've heard about it, but it could have been faked, right? A lot of money's been made from quantum mechanics. Whatever, just attack it. No, not at all. Quantum mechanics has been tested thousands and thousands of times in so many ways you can't even count them. Keep track of them at all. So pick one that proves it. No. The other thing is the fallacy of the smoking gun. The smoking gun fallacy is one of the things that served the truth embargo very well. It's used all the time, and it doesn't do anybody any good. All right. And what do I mean by that? There's no such thing. It doesn't exist. And so, to the extent that you're looking for smoking guns, you're already in trouble. You've just wandered off into the woods. Murder trial. Excuse me. Is it not the case that you saw this individual shoot so and so? Defense attorney gets up and says, you're making it up. It's a lie. You were paid to do it, or you were in prison, right? And they took some time off. Okay. And so, what's your vision? Did you have glasses? And on and on and on. And so the person's testimony, like, I saw him, I had no big deal. Ah, but sir, do you have a photograph? I do. I have a photograph right here of him shooting it. It's fake, right? You can do that. Very easy to fake a photograph. All right. So that doesn't count. Well, let's see. He told me. All right. Wait a minute. We found the gun. Did we not find the gun in the person's bedroom? And did not the caliber match with the shells? It was planted, right? Was it not your gun? Yeah, but I haven't seen it in a while. Somebody borrowed it. And on and on and on. There is no such thing as a smoking gun. This is it. You're guilty. Now, in people's minds, there might be. In other words, okay, well, that's it. A juror can sit down there and they put one piece of evidence up and they go, that's it. The person's guilty as hell. But ultimately, people understand that that's wrong, and that juror shouldn't be sitting on that jury. Right? That's not the way you deal with science. It's not the way you deal with anything. So the situation on the ET issue was simple. Tell me the number one thing that convinced you that the ETs were real, and then you tell them, and then they immediately start to chop away at it, right? There is nothing you could say that can't be challenged. However, if you've got the testimony of, you've got over hundreds of thousands of people have recorded their contact experience and sent them to researchers. You've got film, you've got radar, you've got pilots, you've got deep investigation by people, you've got individuals coming forward, not one or two, thousands, and not over a couple of months, years, decades. But if you want a real smoking gun, but it's not a smoking gun, but I love it. They put out a press release, The Army Air Force Base, the only nuclear base in the country that had been instrumental in ending the war, which killed millions and millions of people. These are generally considered to be pretty good people working at that base. You know, they weren't hiring them off the street. And so the war's over, and they're conducting, you know, their affairs in the post-disclosure world. Because post World War II era, where there's threats developing in the Soviet Union, and something crashes nearby, and they bring the wreckage in, they look at it, so forth. And the base commander, we're pretty sure it wasn't a joke, he was playing on the United States, says, we've got one of those saucers we've been hearing about, put out a press release. How about that? 1947. Went out on July the 8th, or maybe it's July the 7th. You know, I think it was, I forget when the press release, I could have been very early on the 8th, whatever. Gets picked up by AP, it gets reprinted in a number of papers. As it happens, and this is again, the truth embargo has also been lucky, right? I mean, you can't do what they did and not have luck. All right, it's not, you know, they're not that brilliant. They hadn't found the second crash site yet, so they hadn't found the bodies yet. So they put that saucer press release out, but it doesn't mention bodies because they didn't know about them. If they had gotten the bodies too, and the press release was, U.S. government, you know, has saucers with pilots, right? And that goes out to the AP. It's over. The truth embargo would have never even happened. But fortunately for the government, they hadn't got the bodies yet. But it's possible if they found the bodies, Blanchard would have gone, wait a minute, we got to think about this. We got to put out a press release just yet. Let's call Ramey. Let's get to the Secretary of Defense. You know, this is over my head. But he thought it was cool. And he puts a press release out, 1947. Now, that's almost a smoking gun, right? Because it confirms that something happened. And all the research after that confirms what the hell it was, right? And people say, well, you know, how do we know there were pilots? Well, something was stinking up the hospital there in Roswell. An odor so foul, people were literally practically knocked them out, right? Which normally doesn't happen when you're operating on a human being, and on and on and on. So again, to get to the point is this. The truth embargo would want all of us chasing smoking guns and debunking anything that comes along, particularly people, until the end of this century, as long as we don't confront the government with the lie. Well, guess what? I've logged in 7,000 articles on my print media archive since 2017. 7,000 real journalistic articles, pro-journalism, not silliness. And there's almost no skepticism, no debunking, maybe less than 1%. And so you can go read the coverage of everything that's happened in the last 7 years, 7,000 articles, and then ask yourself, actually, all those 7,000 articles are just, it's so sad that they invested all of this time about something that doesn't even exist. No ETs, no craft. It's all a mistake. Sure. Right. So it is the volume of it. And one of the reasons the truth embargo ended, or is ending, after a hell of a good run, though it's still extraordinary, it lasted another 20 years, is that the volume of evidence doesn't mean much if it's parked in a facility somewhere at a college or a university, and the only way to find out about it is to go there and go through the microfiche or whatever. And so for one reason, that's the way a lot of things kind of hang in there, right? Because not that many people really can get access to it. And then starting in the late 1990s, something turned up called the internet. First, there was email. That was a big deal. AOL, I was there. And then the website stuff started happening. And then the internet got going. And by 2000, it was already known that the only thing getting more search inquiries than the UFO was porn. I mean, let us acknowledge the power of porn.
If we completed to, we might be millionaires. Maybe.
Yeah, I missed out on that one too. And crypto. I missed so many boats. I could have my own fleet. And so the thing is that so all of a sudden the ability of stuff to be known everywhere starts happening, and the UFO ET issue was in the public domain. It had been in public domain, but all of a sudden the public domain grew, and it got worse every single year. The internet grows. There's all kinds of UFO websites. They weren't very good, but they were very good. And then suddenly the social media turns up 2003 with Facebook, right? And eventually we have Facebook and TikTok and Instagram. And then 2006, you got Twitter, which was the big one. All right. And so by 2008, which, well, 2009, by 2009, I'd 2007, I'd had 3X conferences in this area, 2007, 2008, 2009. The reality of the ET presence and the information attended to it, as well as search ability to find any book, any doc you wanted, had spread around the entire planet. The entire planet, right? And it gets better because Google comes in, right, doing its thing with Chrome, not that about the same time, and very quickly the translation module turns up. So essentially, Google was allowing people to translate any web page in the world into their language, just about anything. We don't do it that much. Most people don't. Fact is, you can. You go to a UFO site in Mongolia and open it up, look at it, and go, I think I'll translate that to English. How in the hell did this lie manage to still hold on as this massive body of evidence is spreading worldwide? Because the United States commanded the issue because of its power and its ability to deter the nuclear threat to all of the other, quote, democratic or Western countries. So they all deferred to the United States, meaning we are not going to touch this. We're not going to go there. It's your call, right? That's one reason. And then huge amounts of money invested, probably billions over these years, invested in maintaining this truth embargo in every way possible, as well as light coercion and whatever the hell they can come up with. And still, it hung on as it spread and spread. But it only got worse every single year. I mean, the only reason I do what I do is because I use the net to the max that I can with the resources I have. If somebody gave me $1 million, my God, what I could do. The point is that at that point, its fate is sealed. It cannot possibly withstand the power of what is now a neurosphere around the planet where you can find anything from any country, with a few exceptions, anytime, all the time. And they're still lying into the face of that, right? Now, and so when you want to talk about what is the proof of the ET presence, it is an untold vast body of knowledge that is now in the hands of hundreds of millions, if not billions of people around the world who are tweeting it, researching it, putting up websites, exchanging information about it, fact-checking it. And so anybody that steps out in front of a camera to play the game, which a few people have recently, again, not their fault, and tries to like persuade this vast billion participated neurosphere, we've looked at a bunch of, of the reports, and we just don't see any evidence of extraterrestrials there. We just don't see it there. All I can say to you folks is that if you want to continue to play this game, it's not like the 90s or the 80s. Every stupid thing you say about this is going to follow you down for the rest of your life because it's all archived, it's all reported. And so if you want to go there, understand you will pay a price, not threatening, as we move into what I call the Great Truth era. So it's not like 52 rather, when we had one of the most important UFO flaps of history over Washington, D.C., like would be above my head right here, went on for 13 days. Plasma lights, like we're seeing now in a major UFO flap over multiple bases. The same thing that the Foo Fighters, the pilots were seeing in World War II, the Foo Fighters, these were controlled plasma effects, happened in 52. And they came up with a statement from General Sanford saying, serious kind of statement, but whatever. Meanwhile, Donald Keogh, who was a distinguished Marine pilot, was interviewed and said, "There's extraterrestrials here." Boom, 1947. Okay, but you can't even really. If you look hard enough, you can find that interview with Keogh. But I spent 20 years before I discovered it, and so didn't matter, did it? Now, when a Grush comes forward saying things every bit as profound as Keogh, he's now world famous. And hundreds of millions of people are aware of David Grush. And still, there are people at the Pentagon that think it's okay, got this under control. It's all right. We're gonna push back here, push back there, get some defense contractors to throw some money. What the hell? And the truth embargo will continue. It's really sad. It is really sad. And that's why there has to be humor, because this embargo is so ludicrous now. It's so funny in a lot of ways. It's just you got to laugh at it.
Well, and people, the other important thing about this is that it's not just about, ETs and UFOs, but the bigger questions of, is there suppressed technology that could change the world for the better? Like the Invention Secrecy Act in the 50s, which, I think they justified it by saying that it was the reason why they could suppress technology from the public was for economic stability or whatever, but that also means if they uncover something that could put, give us free energy like Tesla wanted, or, whatever it may be, that's something that could change the world for the better in regards to, free energy or just better medicine or whatever it may be, they could suppress that if it meant that for economic reasons it'd be harmful to some industries. And so, like, that's an issue. It also starts sparking the conversation about the origin of man, which to me is very interesting. And I have sometimes guests on, and we start talking about ancient civilizations and whatnot, and like the pyramids and all these things that are being uncovered all over the world, like in the Azores in Portugal, the pyramids they're finding in the ocean and near the islands, and all these things, and it's like all these things are interconnected because what they're uncovering is that our understanding of our story could be much more complex than we think. And there could be a lot of things that we still haven't discovered or we need to rediscover. And then you look at like Tesla's famous quote of, if you want to understand the universe, you have to understand vibration, frequency, and energy. When you look at like the engine, right, the car engine, if you look at like certain things, like a lot of technology really we've even though we have advanced quite a bit, there's certain things about like vibration, frequency and energy that we still don't know or understand. And so I think there's a lot to uncover about the nature of reality and all these things. And I think that's the beautiful thing about this topic. It kind of gets people to kind of zoom out of their material world and ask these larger questions.
Okay, let me frame that for you. In the beginning, it was there's ETs here. They've got technology. We have that tech. We have the body. So we're going to be able to learn something from it. We're in a death match with the Soviet Union and eventually the China, and eventually nine countries had nuclear weapons. And so there's ETs here, and we've got that. That's the beginning, pretty early on. Okay, fine. So it's I can understand it. Again, I don't. I've said many times, if I was General Ramey, I'd have probably done the same thing. If I'd have been Truman, I might have probably done the same thing. I can understand it. The problem is not that they decided to initiate what amounted to a truth embargo and then formalized it in 52. It's that they kept it too long. That is their sin. That's what history is going to excoriate them for. Not starting it, but not ending it sooner than they did. Right. In fact, waiting so long that literally we had to be at death's door as a society before they decided, let's get on with it. Right? So, but as time goes by, because of all that research by all those people writing all those books, right? I got a few hundred right over here to the right, and all the documentaries and all the sighting reports and all that. We started to realize the full scope of it. And one of the things that helped energize this movement, and certainly Stephen Greer did a lot to emphasize this, is one of the things he definitely helped with, pushed very hard, is that as you get to the late 80s, say 1990, the government has had in its possession now craft, tech, and bodies for at least 43 years. We know they had it. We know that it was in classified programs. We know that they were studying it, right? We know that they we know the very fact that the ETs were anti-gravitic, obviously, just like birds can fly, they're seeing these things going around that confirms it can be done. And when you know something can be done, the amount of effort and science you put into it'll be tenfold, right? As opposed to some wild ass theory, you don't know what the hell, but give it a shot. No. And so they were focusing on antigravitics. I think they solved that problem. And clearly everybody understood they're studying everything they have with all the money they could possibly want in black programs you'll never find unless we have some adjustments. And so people began to realize that, wow, technology is the only thing we have to deal with the problems we create for ourselves. I mean, we do. Humans, we got too many people and they got too many needs and whatever, and they create all kinds of problems. And you have to have technology to solve them. And so tech is how we've kept it together. Not totally together, but we kept it together. We need tech to get more fresh water, to get more food, to do less damage to the environment, whatever. We need that technological. We came to understand that. A lot of people started to realize there's a whole lot of tech that is not available to deal with our problems because it is still trapped in this embargo. It's like if Cuba had the cure to 10 or 15 diseases because they had some pretty interesting medical programs down there. Unfortunately, we can't avail ourselves of those because Cuba's embargoed and we don't deal with that stuff. People will be going, what? What? And so that started to put even more pressure on them. And then eventually we started to get an even bigger picture. And so now 78 years on, we have an enormous amount of information about their genetic works and abilities there from contactees. We know that they shut down our nuclear weapons, both here and abroad. We know that they give messages. We know that the government has invested a huge amount, clearly, in dealing with learning everything they could. We know we're not the only country doing that. And so there's this whole vast arena that could have enormous influence on the future of the human race that is embargoed behind this policy, which is so, and this is the policy, which is just so irritating, is that, well, because we don't have a need to know and we don't have a right to know. And if we did know, we couldn't handle the truth. They've been pushing that crap out for a long time. And it's harder and harder for people to believe that. In fact, I doubt if even 20% believe that, but they're still putting it out there, right? When the truth is, and I'm all about language, maxims, phrases. This is my stock and trade. No, the actual truth is the government can't handle us knowing the truth. And so this cannot go on. We must have that technology in an appropriate way. We must have access, responsible access to everything that they have learned, not to weaponize, but to, and then we must have the ability to monitor, control any weaponization of this technology so we don't end up having that nuclear war as we start to make the risk of it greater through technology providing greater and greater first strike capability and so forth. So I'm not saying that the tech can't be dangerous. I'm simply saying that we can handle knowing about it. We can handle dealing with it. We can handle moderating it in a responsible way. We can handle trying to avoid it triggering a nuclear war. And the people that are telling us we can't handle it believe that they can handle it. And I know enough of these people to know that I can make a case that they're probably, in many cases, less able to handle this stuff than we are. And so this whole thing has got to wrap up. And so because it's become such a more complex, rich subject with more implications, is why Danny Sheehan is out there talking about worldview change, paradigm shift, and so am I. But he's got 3 more Harvard degrees than I have, and his developing think tank or developing entity is much bigger. But I'm quicker on my feet. I can maneuver fast, like a destroyer. He's an aircraft carrier. I'm a destroyer. It's why Gary Nolan brought together big time people, raised a lot of money in a science think tank called Soul Foundation. Why is he doing that? Because they are aware of all of the other stuff that's going to come out, and they want to be able to deal with it responsibly. There's political implications. That's why they created the UAP Disclosure Fund out of, I think, San Francisco, raised a lot of money. 501c4, political entity, 501c4. You put money in it, and then it uses that money to help political figures understand the way to go, to influence policy. More of that is coming. There's documentaries in the works. There's films in the works that are going to address this issue in a much more realistic way. We're practically there. And so my job is to help people understand, and by people, I mean just regular people, understand what's going on, to sort of, triage out the weird stuff or whatever, and get down to the basics, the fundamentals, what's most important, leading up to disclosure, and then after disclosure to influence, well, help people understand what happens after disclosure. Because after disclosure is going to be even more challenging than now. After disclosure, you got 8 billion people, and suddenly stuff is coming out of this country and that country and over here and this tech and that and whatever, and they're trying to figure out what does this mean? What are they going to do with it? Will it harm us, help us? Is it a good idea, bad idea? How can we address it in terms of the society? What politics, what laws need to be passed, and so forth? And they're not going to be attending lectures at Harvard on this. It's like we're getting a bunch of people together. We're going to have a symposium, right? You come in, no. So they need citizen activists who understand the issue to help inform them. That is one of the chief reasons why I'm going to continue this forever as Paradigm Research Group. It's one of the chief reasons that I configured as a nonprofit 501c3 about 7 months ago. So now I can accept tax-free, tax-deductible donations because I've got more to do. All right. And then and another thing that I'll be doing, assuming I get the funding, that is in one of my number one mandates without question, which you touched on, is that one of my chief goals is to help ensure that all these legends that we've been talking about, the researchers, the activists, even some politicians that have carried this water since 47, all the way back to Keogh, and everybody since, is not shoved off the stage in the post-disclosure world by a bunch of smartasses that come forward. Yeah, I always knew it. I got a lot of money. I got a big company here. Now go along, people. You thought it was real when it was crazy to think so. So you're a little weird. We don't need you. No. We've got to make sure these people get involved. They get involved in deals. They get involved in films, in research. Some of them are on the Presidential Review Board when they finally get the rest of the act passed. They cannot be sidetracked. And that's going to be one of the things, by being a pain in the ass, I'm going to be doing. And there's a lot of ways that we can help ensure that. One of the things that I've been able to do in that regard, with no money, we bootstrapped the damn thing, but nothing, is because of an idea from my publicist, Dan Harari in Hollywood. He said, we need to create a Hollywood Disclosure Alliance. And I said, oh, yes, we do. And it turned out that Dan had been a publicist for a similar organization like 20, 30 years ago that did what the HDA is doing on a much grander scale with massive money and famous movie stars, called the Environmental Media Association. And it was created to network the entire environmental activist movement, which does have some very good, things to do, say, right? Not everything is, copacetic, but most of it is. With the Hollywood giants, the content people that create docs and movies, and they got all the equipment and the money, to get them together to create the messaging that's going to help people understand how we're going to navigate the environmental challenges that 8 billion people has posed on this planet. And they're still around. They're a big deal. So Hollywood Disclosure Alliance, which is now at hollywooddisclosurealliance.org, it's a nonprofit 501c3, was set up to network the content creation world, all the smart people, the writers, the directors, the producers, the actors, production people, CGI, whatever the hell, right? At every level, all the way from big time down to basic, to help connect them with all the UAP people. The Richard Dolans and others, many others, countless others, who have done the research that are still in the work to connect them so they can find each other and make the content that's going to educate the entire human race post-disclosure. and a little pre-disclosure stuff as well. In spite of no money, we have built it. It's 501(c)(3). We have 190 members, 95 Hollywood founding members and 95 UAP founding members from all over the world. We have a board of 20 and an executive committee. Dan is one of the founders, and I'm one of the founders. And then we have a pretty good group of people, but we have plans. If we can get some serious funding in the HDA, there are things we can do to expand that to 200, 300, 400 members, including significant events that will ultimately lead to major Hollywood figures, major film industry figures who have done a lot of good stuff to step in to make this a big deal. So that's one way we're helping to make sure. On my website, I have an in memoriam section, paradigmresearchgroup.org, under ongoing projects. It's up to 120 people that have passed, that were in this field, that made a difference. Got the photo, got the, a link to, information about them. 120. That's just a way. And every time somebody passes, I put them up, right? Why? Because if PRG gets bigger, I can drive an awful lot of people to that website. And a lot of people are going to go to that, and I can promote it more. A lot of people are going to go to that memoriam section and say, oh, this person, yeah, they did this, that, and this, that, and this, that, and that's that, Donald Keogh, John Mack, even like Carla Turner, everybody that's been in this field as a essentially citizen, activist, journalist, documenting, and so forth, that have been doing this with almost no money while they were being laughed at by the government for 78 years. They'll be going, oh. So that's one of the things that I can do, right? As a small organization, even with modest funding. That's something I can do, but there's more. If I can get just $25,000 into PRD, I can lock down a date for the 7th X Conference 2025. The first 6 were pretty good, but this one will be even better and probably make money. And it would be at the Press Club with the Washington Plaza as the attended hotel. And it will probably be after disclosure, but I got to get going on it soon. And it would be, I guess, focused entirely on the post-disclosure, political science, and other issues, the hardcore stuff. And I think I could get some extraordinary speakers. So that's another project I could do. So that's what I'm doing. And then I mentioned these other organizations, even MUFON, their membership's going up. More people should join, not so they can go out and, check some sighting report, because MUFON is getting into the media being big time. Ron James is in charge of the media. Go there. They got all kinds of stuff. They're also, they've got a lobbyist firm working for them, or they've been doing a lot of lobbying. They've had plenty of meetings on the Hill. MUFON is trying to get in the post-disclosure world. So give them $1 million so that they can be a major player. They're the ones with the massive files and documents, one of the organizations, which, again, not to prove anything, but to be available to the historians and the researchers, as we need to educate the whole world to the reality of the ET presence post-disclosure. And so MUFON's got these massive files. Now they need the resources to put it out. That's what's going on. And obviously MUFON has a history that goes all the way back to 1969. And so again, if you want all of these heroes that they don't get Pulitzer Prizes, they don't get the Congressional Freedom Awards, they only get awards from their own people at conferences. I've given away many, but overall, if you want them to be able to be a factor, to be acknowledged, to make it easier for other people to come in and say, well, I want to do this, support the organizations that I'm talking about. Because it's no longer about, oh, we got to prove this to be true. No, it's about how are we going to shape the post-disclosure world so it doesn't just be a how would you say, niftier version of the pre-disclosure world, where we're destroying the planet, killing ourselves by the millions, and always on the verge of mutual assured destruction, right? Do you want that? Just another version of that? Then you want the entire body of knowledge and expertise and all the effort of all of these people right out there in the front line being featured, being docked, being films about them, and then being used as consultants, right? Instead of calling up your brother-in-law, hey, I think about doing a doc on this issue. Didn't you read a book once? Come talk to me. No, call up the researchers that got 50 years or 40 or 30 years and have written 7 books back when, well, there was nothing to it, right? It was all embargoed. It was all intellectually ghettoed. And so those books couldn't be valuable, could they? I know I'm preaching now. I'm really rocking, but I'm enjoying the hell out of this because we're so close. We're so close. I haven't even given you, look, let's finish up with this. That'll give us a solid 2 hours.
Yeah.
All right.
Before we
Here is why disclosure, I believe, is about to happen. Now, that's not a guarantee. I'm not picking a date, though the headlines will always read Steve Bassett is predicting disclosure next month, that kind of crap. I'm basically saying here is why it's right there at hand. Okay. 8 hearings, 2 major ones, Grush, and then the 4 witnesses on the 13th, right? A number of hearings in the Senate as well, mostly briefing hearings, but still, really. 4 pieces of legislation, one of which was a massive omnibus bill that would cover the entire disclosure process. It got cut in half, but still there. Got resubmitted, pulled back because of the election. Eventually, it's going to get passed. We've got the massive media coverage of everything that happened. Thousands of articles. We've got the fact that the president of the United States has been asked about this issue as much as any other president or candidate, with a possible exception of Hillary Clinton, though I think it's about the same. That's happening. We have the fact that in the lead up to the election, we learned that a number of people in his immediate circle favored going there. We have the extraordinary fact that just a while ago, 10 days ago, it was suddenly announced out of nowhere that the House Oversight Committee, which has been where the major hearings have been taking place, and a third is on its way, which will include the nuclear witnesses, the shutdown witnesses, that's all being lined up, is on its way. They suddenly announced that their intention to get to truth, to get to the lies in the deep state, however you want to phrase it. We're really serious about this. How serious? We're going to set up a task force, which costs money. That's why it's only a 6-month task force, but they don't need more than 6 months. And we're going after the secrets and the withheld stuff you are most wishing to have. And they literally list it. And we're in this task force, which is going to be called the Task Force on Declassifying Federal Secrets, which is, I think, pretty direct name, nothing ambiguous about that. We will have subpoena power through the committee, and they've already sent a demand letter. And when asked about this, the chairman of this committee, Anna Paulina Luna, who along with Nancy Mace and Tim Burchett are the firebrands that are absolutely never going to give up on this, was asked, where is the UAP information? The UAP process, truth process. She said it's 4th. Okay. What are the 3 things in front of it? Well, the JFK documents is in play already. The RFK documents, which have not been fully put out. The MLK documents, and a bonus deal, the Epstein client list, which apparently is already on, Bondi's, the Attorney General's desk, Bondi's desk, and then the UAP. Now, why is that not a problem for me? Because getting the documents that have been withholding, to the incredible irritation of the American people, on the deaths of some of the most important people of the 20th century, a couple of subpoenas, a demand letter, and we're going to kick your ass if you don't get on this right now, and it's done. Boom, 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 boom. And so 2-3 weeks, boom, got it done. Hold the hearing in the oversight subcommittee, and what's next? UAP issue. Okay. And then here is the coup de grace. The reason why I feel so emboldened that we're practically there, barring, of course, a major thing happening. I don't know, a class 9 hurricane hits Florida and puts the whole thing underwater, whatever, is this. 3 days before the inauguration of the current president, I get a link to a YouTube. I get these all the time. It's YouTube. Watch this. So I go, okay. So I put it up and I put it in there. And I immediately discovered that Donald Trump Jr., who last I checked was the son of the current president, has a podcast. Now, look, everybody has a podcast now. So again, there's nothing odd about it, right? Pretty soon, the only people you can interview in a podcast are other podcasters. But aside from that, Donald Jr. has a podcast. And because he's Don Jr., he's got 1 million followers. I forget what his 1 million subscribers. That's a big number. So he's a heavy duty dude. Okay. And he's good. He's a good podcaster. He handles it well. He knows what he's doing. And okay, so who's he interviewing 3 days before the inauguration of his father? Luis Elizondo and Ross Coulthart, one of the absolute leading witnesses that just testified in front of the subcommittee back on the 13th of November. And Ross Coulthart, who broke the story to the New York Times, broke the story of Grush, rather, in June 5, and is all over a bunch of other stories. And they interviewed him for an hour and a half. And they're talking nothing but UAP, UFOs, and disclosure. And then the other thing was, and, coming from both Elizondo and Coulthart, they're talking to Don. It's like, well, your dad this, and your dad that, and your dad said this, and their dad, your dad, your dad. And I'm going, well, isn't this interesting? What are the chances that Donald Trump Jr., just on his own, decided, hey, I'm going to bring these guys on, have an hour and a half, have some fun, and he didn't clear it with his father first? Or that his father didn't tell him to do it? Pretty low. Now, for some people, they go, well, it's nothing. Well, they haven't spent 28 years doing nothing but look at this and think about this. So I'm simply saying, and there's one other factor, there's one other thing that's important. There have been 14 presidents that have known about the ET presence. Trust me, every single one knew. And a lot of other people knew that you might say, no, they couldn't know. Yeah, they knew. So many people know about it, it's ridiculous, but they have their reasons why they are not going to force what is happening now. Of those 14, one is different than all the rest in a very important way, and that is the current president. The other 13 all made the decision, the DOD feels that we should hold off on this. I've got other things to do. We'll let them handle it. 2 of them kind of made an effort. Jimmy Carter in 1977 and the Clinton administration, 1993 to 1996, but it wasn't going to be allowed to go anywhere, and it didn't, but they tried. This president is not like any of those other 13. He is much more of an independent operator. He is completely operating operating outside a huge range of norms. He has appointed very close people to him in all the key positions, Secretary of Defense, National Intelligence, CIA, and so forth. People that are very much associated with him, support him. And he is someone that appreciates legacy. And so he is the first president since Roswell that if 16 generals at the Department of Defense said, Mr. President, it's better that you don't go there. The people can't handle the truth right now, and we'll deal with this. It's okay. We got it. No problem. He is the first president to say, I don't think so, and just do it. Walk out in the White House East Room and do it. Right. I talked to my Secretary of Defense. I talked to my CIA director. I talked to the Director of National Intelligence and several other people. They asked around. And the information they're getting back is, that's true. We got bodies, we got tech. And I'm confirming it. And boy, are you going to get all the knowledge and stuff, going to get it all out to you. At that instance, he gets one of the greatest political legacies in all of human history. And I happen to think he is a gentleman that appreciates the value of an extraordinary legacy. So he could do it tomorrow, but Nancy Mace is about to hold another hearing with the nuke witnesses. It's going to be big shot, big time. And so he could just wait a little bit, have that hearing, and walk out the next day and do it. Now, the difference between these two things, there's not much difference between these two things. But the only difference at this point between those two scenarios is that if the president just goes out and does it and says, yeah, I talked to some people, we're here, you want to know more, I'll be back to you. Boom, disclosure is just taking place. A number of the other heads of state that know about the ET presence may hold off a little bit. They may not just immediately follow and say, yep, it's true, it's here, because the president is, as I say, tends to operate out there, outside the normal boundaries, right? And they're kind of, oh, what's going on? On the other hand, if we have another major hearing, particularly the one that Mace wants, and then afterwards he comes out and says, yeah. I've made the queries. I've looked at this. We are not alone. The other heads of state will follow like that. Boom, 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 boom. I don't know about China and Russia, right? I'm more worried about them doing it first, frankly, but what they do after our president discloses, but they will eventually do it. They won't wait that long. And we're in the post-disclosure world. Donald Trump will be the disclosure president with one of the greatest legacies ever, but almost immediately it will be a global phenomenon. No one will be the king of the post-disclosure world because 8, 9, 10, 15, 20 countries will be supporting it. And they will say, well, we got gun camera footage. We got this. And their people are going to look at him and say, well, Mr. Prime Minister, why didn't you tell us about this years ago? You knew too. We're upset. And the answer from every one of them will be the same. Yes, we could have told you, but we deferred to the United States of America. Why? Because the United States of America was the only thing between us and nuclear annihilation from one of our less friendly countries. They had the nukes, they had the power, they had the financial ability. They essentially were the only thing we had. We could not do it alone, and we were not going to undercut them, cut in line. We were not going to embarrass them by coming out and grandstanding and saying, oh, by the way, there's ETs here. The US wouldn't tell you, but we're going to tell you. No. Russia and China had their own reasons. They didn't want their people thinking about ETs. They wanted to think about the dear leader and the ideology, and so they have held back. But they will come forward, and then the answer will be, and we defer to the United States. And their citizens will go, oh, I get that. That's fine. And there we are, post-disclosure world. Now, that's as far as I want to go. All I can say is this. The biggest event in human history could be close. Anything you can do to help that, we'll take the help, right? Anything you can do to prepare for what you might do it. Okay. You missed out on crypto and some other stuff. Don't miss out on the post-disclosure world. Don't be like a year into the post-disclosure world going, I could have sold T-shirts and made a friggin' fortune. I actually know people are going to do that. When it comes to a major paradigm shift, T-shirts is a guaranteed profit maker. I mean, you can't lose, right? So this is where I want to leave y'all in. And this was fun. Oh, and lastly, internet. I mean, the rise of email, right? The rise of the internet, the rise of the bulletin boards, the rise of all the websites, the rise of one social media thing after another, with translation capability and everything else, didn't quite bring the truth embargo down. And then, on top of all of that came the podcast revolution, which is not the radio stations being able to broadcast on the internet like broadcast.com, which made somebody wealthy. I forget who it was. That was kind of a big deal. No. This is 1,000 times bigger than that. The podcast revolution. I call them the podcast army. There's something like 6 to 8 million podcasts now. There are several thousand podcasts that are dealing with this issue directly or indirectly. Archived, multiple platforms all around the world. Ball game. That's why I've done hundreds and hundreds of podcasts, and I call them my podcast army. You guys locked it down. That's it. Anybody that thinks that truth embargo can stand up against this podcast army are out of their friggin' mind, right? So that was kind of the last thing that ended it. So, and then of course, you think the podcast army is going to be important in the post-disclosure world? You think podcasting is going to be a major influence factor once everybody knows the ETs are here, and there have been some nice people that have been podcasting about that for 10 years? Kamala Harris doesn't get that, unfortunately for her. Right? Podcast, it's a bunch of people in their basement, in their underwear, just, playing, having fun, thinking they're Walter Cronkite. No, she was asked to do Joe Rogan. Couldn't work it out. I give you an hour tops. You got to come to the East Coast. Joe said no. The current president said yes. His podcast is, as you know well, like I think it's been seen now by something like 150 to 200 million people, something like that. I mean, because it's archived and it's been reviewed. Yeah, he's president and she is not, and that's just the beginning. All right. If you want to make differences in the post-disclosure world, if you want to influence, if you want to shake the trees, you have got to understand the importance of the podcast, whether you're doing one or guesting on one or just paying attention. All right. Because this is one of the most extraordinary things that has ever happened to the human race. I didn't see it coming, right? I really didn't. And then it finally arrived, and I'm going, hmm. And then finally I said, oh my God, this is unbelievable. So I'll leave you with that. If you got I'll take any other questions, and I swear a short answer, or we can wrap it right here.
Well, before that Trump podcast, actually the episode that was released right before the Trump Rogan podcast was
Yeah.
the one with this guy, Sam Tripoli. He was on Rogan that Friday. He actually got a lot of backlash because everybody expected not. I think it was like more poking fun, but that Friday everybody expected a Trump podcast to come out at the typical time, and instead Sam Tripoli's episode came out. So he's like, "Where the hell is Trump?" Everybody was mad at him, and then eventually the episode came out later that night. But yeah, I mean, Sam Tripoli says it all the time. The revolution will be podcasted.
Yes.
I, I
Yes.
I agree with him 100%. We talked before we started recording in the beginning of the conversation. We talked about censorship and some of the censorship I've dealt with and other people in the community. One of the few places that we still have almost full control is our RSS feed. And if you use a app like Podcast Addict or some of these other alternative podcast apps, and I say alternative to like the big two, which is Spotify and iTunes. If you use one of these alternative podcast apps, you can get the podcast directly from the content creator. So you subscribe right to their RSS feed. The content comes right directly to you. There's no middleman. There's no iTunes. There's no Spotify. So the chances of censorship is much smaller, and the likelihood of censorship is much less. So definitely do that. There's been a lot of censorship on video platforms, but it seems like the RSS feeds have been one of the best places to keep up with, censored information and where you can get you remove the middleman, like I said. But to wrap this, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, but again, I said we're talking about an army here, right? So entity A censors something, but five other entities over here say the same thing. You cannot censor the whole thing. All you can do is censor a little here, a little there. So they're going to lose that. Okay. And by the way, I just said this just the other day because again, I came of age in the 60s, and there was a lot of activism going on back then, let me tell you. And in the 60s, you got the Chicago Seven. I think it was Jerry. Uh, I forget the one that said this. They said they said basically, look, the revolution will be televised. This was a big phrase back then. And recently, I just said, okay, yeah, and I repeat, and I said, yeah, this time the revolution will be podcasted, and the difference between those two is huge. Okay, huge. Let me give you a quick an example. I'll be quick. In 1971, I was part of a million people that marched on Washington, but I was actually living in Washington, so it was easy. This was an anti-war march, and they had it was also a civil rights and anti-war march, and they had people that were going to speak on the Capitol steps where the inauguration is. They had a big wire fence around it, whatever. And I woke up that morning. We had 20 people, 30 people on the living room floor. They'd all come in, and they were crashing on and they're going to go march. And my roommate and I said, uh, I think we should go up and see what's going on. He was in the Air Force at the time, so we set off to go up to the Capitol steps where this presentation was going on before a million people. It took us quite a while because we had to walk through several 100,000 of them going up Pennsylvania Avenue. It takes us, oh, good long time. Finally, we get up to the White House steps. at the screen, right? The screen, and I say screening, it's like wire thing is wired it off. And we're listening to the speaker. I think it was either Perry or Mrs. King, but whatever. And after that presentation was over, the CBS reporter walks up right to us. There's three of us standing there. Me and my friend who's in his Air Force uniform, he took some crap over that, and another guy. And they asked us a question each about what we had heard. Actually, it was about the Nixon administration's handling of the quote ending the Vietnam War. And so I said something I think quite pithy. Uh, my the other two said something, and then we were done. They walked away. And so we're standing there and we started looking at each other and we said, that's CBS. That's Walter Cronkite. Comes on at 6. We're going to be on CBS News with Walter Cronkite. So immediately, my friend Fred and I said, we got to get back to the apartment and watch this. So now we had to turn around and walk back through 200,000 people. We got back to the apartment a little before 6, sat down on the couch, turned on the TV with about 20 or 30 people in the room, waiting for our moment in the sun to come. And it didn't happen. It didn't happen. And then at the very last few minutes of the show, there we were. There I was, giving my thoughts on the Vietnam War and Richard Nixon on Walter Cronkite. Okay. And then it was over. Right, so what happened next? That was it. That was it. I had my say, little say. And then it got put in the archives of CBS, where they archived the stuff, and never seen again. Now, a couple of years ago, I got kind of keen on, I wanted to get that. So I contacted to see how much it would cost to get that clip from their archives. $10,000. So you see the difference I'm getting at? You've got all of that television coverage of all those marches and this and that and this issue and anti-war and everything else goes in the archives. It cost a fortune to get it. And then we entered our age where every interview can be archived on the web, available to anybody, never go away. Right. And so that little thing, if I do that today, well, I've done all these interviews, it's just spreading. So imagine the problem that an activist has back then when they can get something on the air and it's kind of important and it's on and it's never seen again unless somebody, and then it's archived and you're still trying to advance a movement where now you can get stuff in play and it goes viral and then it gets archived and there's nothing the government can do about it. So yeah, the revolution, whatever that is now, and everybody has a different view of what is the revolution and what's being resolved and not being resolved, is going to be podcast. And I'm prepared to guest on every single one of them.
Well, I have a lot of other podcasters that listen to the show, so definitely, if you want to talk to Steve, hit him up directly or hit me up, and I'll connect you. He's a great interviewer, and obviously been doing this for a really long time, and I can't thank you enough for taking the time again to give me another great episode on the topic. Let's keep in touch. I'll send you links to Opus Clip, which we chatted about a little bit.
Please, I need that. Get those 2 links, please.
Yeah, and connect you with Matt from Content Safe, who's a dear friend. We'll definitely take care of you. Definitely any way we can get this information out there, the better. And I also 100% agree with you that having more is better. The more people that are discussing this, like you said, you kind of create this army, the strength in numbers. You might be able to censor one, but you can't censor all of us. So, keep it going. So thank you so much for making this your life's work and spending so much of your time talking about this, informing people on this topic, and let people know where they can connect with you, any of the social media platforms you're on, your website, YouTube channel, anything that you might have to promote. Let people know if they want to support your work, if they want to donate, how to do that, and anything else.
Well, Twitter, you can search Paradigm Research Group or at Steve Bassett. Twitter, Facebook, Steve Bassett, right? LinkedIn, same thing. Paradigm Research Group is Steve Bassett. I'm all 3 of those, and you can subscribe to my occasional email, PRG update emails on my website, paradigmresearchgroup.org. No problem. And Hollywood Disclosure Alliance, you can obviously contact me through that as well. I didn't share a link. There's my site. Thank you. And you can reach me that way. So there's that. And then, of course, the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance and Paradigm Research Group have donation pages up. They're very professional. Though mine has a glitch, I'm trying to fix it in terms of we just want to donate. It's tax deductible if you're an American citizen. So that's kind of pretty much how to reach me. But and then again, watch for an announcement from Nancy Mace about the next hearing. All right, that is a big, big deal. And then Google search every day the task force on disclosing government secrets. They could have said disclosing government lies, but they appropriately call it government secrets, and just follow that because that's just a a little stone stepping thing to disclosure, right? That's how it's going to go down. Could have gone down through the Senate, but it's going to come down through the House subcommittee. God bless them, and watch for that, and then you can get an idea. But if it doesn't happen in the next 2 months, don't call me up and say I guaranteed it. I didn't, right? But I'm simply saying it looks real close. So if it does happen, well, feel free to email me, basically telling me that I'm a genius. I love that. It's very helpful to me. It keeps me going. All right, Mike.
Awesome, Steve. All right.
Anytime, man.
Hey, thank
And
you
by
so
the way, I promise this is not normal. I've been traveling, but I am going to be upgrading my production values and everything here. I'm getting a better mic and all kinds of stuff because I'm starting to look a little ragged here and not keeping up. So I promise that it'll get better.
Yeah, it's all right. People care about the
Yeah,
content. Yeah, but and I put all this stuff in Pro Tools, and if there's any editing or anything I can
clean
do,
it up for me.
yeah, clean it up if I can. So
Feel free to edit anything out. You're going, oh, that's bullshit. Yeah, get rid of that. I don't care. I
no,
don't trip.
I don't edit anything. It's funny. I recently got somebody asked me about that. I'm like, no, unless a guest asks me to, like, hey, I didn't want to reference their name or I felt bad bringing them up or whatever. I'm like, I don't put edit anything out. Like I said, unless the guest wants me to. And knock on wood, I don't think anybody has in a really, really long time. I think it's been quite a few years since.
Yeah, editing is passe, man. Authentic, real, do it, say it, no problem. Live with it. I love it.
Yeah.
All right, I got to do another interview, my friend. Until next time.
Hey,
Thank you.
take care.